the IT director and a staff attorney for a group called the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. And I'm going to be talking today about something called expungement. So, for those of you who are unaware, it's sometimes called different things in different states. Expungement is the removal of a criminal case from someone's criminal record. And it's something that can really hold people back. And in Maryland, each state is unique in what they allow to be expunged, what's on someone's public record. In Maryland, everything is on your public record. If you went to court, you investigated the case yourself, you found out who the guilty party was, you proved it to the state's attorney, you're found not guilty, that's still on your record. You actually have to take the affirmative step to actually get it expunged. And unfortunately, not everything just says not guilty. Usually there's a lot of these really confusing Latin type terms called nole prosequi. Who knows what that means, right? I found a lot of landlords and employers who look at this and they say, well, that's just a different form of guilty. Of course, nole prosequi means that the state declined to prosecute. This happens all the time for, the person comes in, oh, the person who robbed me was 12 feet tall and had blue hair, so they just dismiss the charges. So, not only did we have all of this public information that was out there for everybody's criminal case, unfortunately, the expungement law itself was really confusing. The state legislatures had gotten together and they carved out all these exceptions for people that certain crimes can be expunged depending on certain dispositions and certain time frames. And it was extremely confusing for anybody to learn whether or not their case was eligible for expungement. Now, the one bright side was that it was actually very objective. A lot of states have some kind of factor test that's, have you become a better person since your crime? In Maryland, it was very either yes or no, but it was a very long branch logic to get there. And of course, as with anything in the law, there's way too many forms involved. And the last kind of piece to this is, in Maryland, everybody's criminal record is not only public, it's easily accessible. In Maryland, you can go online, there's a state-run website that has everybody's criminal record going back to 1985. You just type in the name, and it just pops up. There's no cost or anything like that. And so, this was holding back a lot of people. We got this all the time in law school, and people just weren't able to get jobs. And I did the expungement clinic when I went to Maryland Law School, and it would take hours to help one person because the forms were numerous. And you had to go through all the law, and it would take you, 2 or 3 hours to help one person expungement for, their 4 or 5 cases. And this was not going to help the millions of people in Maryland after, tough on crime and drug crimes, get their records expunged. So here, our solution was to build an automated expungement process. We called it MD expungement. And a lot of things came together to make this possible. The first was that we were able to build a web scraper that pulled the public case data from Maryland's public case search website. So we had their full criminal record right there. And then luckily, because Maryland had objective expungement law, we were able to actually build an algorithm that could determine with almost 100% accuracy whether or not that case was eligible for expungement. And then, of course, we were able to just populate the form, for the technology's been around forever. And the result was mdexpungement.com. And all it required was for you to know your case number. You didn't need to know anything else about expungement law. You didn't need to know anything or have any kind of other knowledge except for your case number. It was able to pull it, tell you that it was eligible for expungement, give you all of the forms you need, and then instructions on how to file them with the court. Unfortunately, Maryland, while it's catching up to electronic filing, it's not quite there yet. So this is where we kind of wish we had done more design thinking in the first place. So this is more of a case study on why I learned is so important. So we built this for pro se litigants. You're John Doe on the street who has a criminal record, doesn't have the money for a lawyer, but needs to get their record expunged. That was our primary target for this. We very quickly realized the biggest user of our website was actually attorneys. They would use it for the automation and the speeding up process, because they would sit with clients, and they would sit there all day and do 2 clients. And then we showed them this website, they realized they could see 20, 30 clients in a single day. And so the first thing was, instead of just entering one case number when somebody might have 10 cases that are eligible, we made it so you could expunge up to 16 at a time. And that tended to kind of speed the whole process up. Now, the reason we didn't do this in the first place is if you're a pro se litigant, you don't necessarily know the law, right? We threw in a lot of warnings and a lot of kind of catches to make sure you know what you're doing, right? here's some possible outcomes, here's some possible consequences, make sure. When you're an attorney, you know all that. You don't want to do it one at a time. You want to do everything at once, right? So all those warnings then led to the next problem that we encountered. Attorneys don't like warnings, right? We put in a lot of stopgaps, and you couldn't proceed if the program caught you, or caught this in a certain way. And so that was the next thing that we realized, that we had all these attorneys going, we're tired of clicking, yes, I understand. Of course I understand, I'm an attorney, right? Gets back into the ego of attorneys. And so that was something that we then had to kind of bifurcate. We had to create a path for your pro se litigants who needed to be slowed down and really understand that they knew what they were doing. And then you had a kind of a highway path for attorneys who said, yeah, I'll take the consequences, this is why I have malpractice insurance. And finally, we kind of took the next step to speed it up a little bit faster here, and we turned the whole website into one big Chrome extension. So before, you would have kind of this case search, which is the Maryland Public Case Search website open, and you would individually transfer, copy and paste one case at a time into an MD expungement website. And we realized that, especially with some of our more Luddite attorneys, that having multiple tabs, copying and pasting, especially on a small screen, just wasn't cutting it. It was causing a lot of frustration. And so we realized that we could actually just build a Chrome extension, and so long as everyone's using Chrome, they could actually just stay on the case search website, which is what all the attorneys and everybody use to look up people's criminal record anyways. And then once you open the extension, it would analyze the current case that you're looking at, and it would determine its eligibility for expungement and print all the forms. And this was the tool that actually finally really sped it up significantly. We kind of, looking back, wish we had really sat down in the beginning and really used the design process to figure it all out. It would have saved us a lot of time. So the last final thing that we realized is we had a lot of situations where people needed to know more information. 99% of expungement law was pretty straightforward with the app we created, but there were a lot of situations where the courts had typos and you needed to try to create other tools, and we had no idea how big the problem was. There was no statistic on the number of cases that were eligible for expungement. So we decided, how do we actually do this? Well, we built the technology to pull one case and analyze it for expungement. And so after a while, we got all these people asking, well, how many cases do we have left? I did 100 today, and how many do we have left to go? So we realized that we could then turn this into scraping every criminal case out of Maryland's Public Case Search website, which is what we did. And we pulled out millions and millions of criminal cases, right? We just let it run for a week, and we crossed our fingers that the courts weren't going to catch up to us by the time we had all the data, and we were right. And we were able to analyze all of these millions of cases. And the result was kind of unfortunate. We have millions of cases in Maryland that are eligible for expungement. In Baltimore City alone, there's 1 million eligible cases. And so while this tool has helped speed up the process, it's now doing a much better job informing people that the problem needs a much bigger fix. It needs some kind of legislative fix to really bring it home. And this was a number that didn't exist before. So one thing that we realized kind of pretty early on is that we weren't prepared for people to run with it. We showed it to people as kind of beta users, but it was still in testing. We just, hey, can you do your next expungement like this and give feedback? What we realized is as soon as we gave them access, they loved it because nobody likes filling out forms by hand. And it would go out on their listserv, it would go out to all of their Facebook friends, and we kind of sat back and well, we needed to bring down the server to do some upgrades here. We weren't really ready for this. So that was something I kind of wish we had predicted in the beginning, or at least made more clear. I would say about 90% of our actual advice and recommendations and things that work came from about 10% of our users who were the power users. These people were unbelievable and kind of going through and figuring it out. And I wish we had targeted kind of the top 10 expungement users in Maryland and really just focused on them instead of saying, you do one expungement a week, can you try this out and see what's useful. And finally, we forced ourselves to take a look at new technology and really force it into expungement. Now, we didn't always go with every idea we came up with, but this was what led to the Chrome extension idea, is that we said, is there a way we could apply a Chrome extension to expungement? It didn't seem that possible at first, or that relevant at first, but then once we kind of forced it, we realized there was something there. And finally, lastly, this is kind of just my pitch for, if you guys are going to create a project for nonprofit, try to get a funding approach that equates greater efficiency with greater funding. A lot of times these funding things have, here's $1,000, good luck, and I hope it lasts forever. And this was something we always struggled with, because we could pour in a lot more hours and make it twice as efficient, but then it would cost a lot more money, and we didn't have any extra funding for that. So that's just kind of if you can make this happen, you can find the holy grail for this. This is definitely worth its weight in gold. Thank you so much.